In a quiet American suburb where nothing ever seemed out of place, a single emergency call changed everything the police thought they knew about reality. It started like any normal night, but by sunrise an entire investigation system would be shaken, reputations would collapse, and a hidden truth would surface. This is the inside story of a USA police case that shocked everyone. It began just after 11:43 p.m. when a trembling voice called 911. The caller didn't scream, didn't panic loudly. Instead, the voice was controlled. Too controlled. That alone made the dispatcher uneasy. The caller reported something simple at first, a disturbance inside a home on the outskirts of the city. But what made this case different was not what was said. It was what was left unsaid. When officers arrived, the situation looked ordinary. A residential home, lights on, no visible signs of chaos from outside. But inside, something felt off. The air was heavy with silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The first responding officers noted small inconsistencies: doors slightly open, personal belongings placed too neatly, a living room that felt reset, like someone had tried to make it look untouched. Nothing screamed crime scene, but nothing felt normal either. Then came the first discovery that changed everything. A key individual connected to the home was missing. Not just missing in the usual sense, but erased from immediate trace. No active phone signals, no recent public activity. It was as if the person had stepped out of reality without leaving a footprint. At first, police treated it as a domestic incident. Possibly voluntary disappearance, but within hours that theory collapsed. Because inconsistencies started stacking up. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual, no argument, no disturbance. Yet surveillance systems showed subtle irregularities, lights flickering at odd times, shadows moving where no one should have been. But the 911 call, that voice as he kept replaying in the minds of investigators, it wasn't fear, it was restraint. As if someone had practiced sounding calm while speaking under pressure. By early morning, detectives were called in. The home was sealed, evidence collection began, and that's when the second strange detail emerged. There were signs of deliberate staging, objects placed in positions that suggested someone wanted a specific narrative to be believed. But the narrative didn't fully make sense. One detective described it later as, "It looked like someone tried to write a story but forgot the ending on purpose." By sunrise, the case was officially escalated, and what no one knew yet was that this was only the beginning. Because the 911 caller had not told the full truth, and somewhere in that silence the real story was waiting to be uncovered. As the investigation expanded, the case quickly moved beyond a simple missing person report. Detectives began pulling every available record tied to the home, the surrounding area, and anyone remotely connected to the missing individual. But instead of clarity, they found fragmentation. Financial records showed normal activity. No distress, no sudden withdrawals, no indication of escape planning. Social behavior patterns were stable. Nothing suggested the disappearance was expected, yet the physical environment told a different story. Inside the home, investigators found subtle contradictions. Items that should have been disturbed were untouched, yet items that should have remained stable were slightly altered. It created a sense that someone had selectively interacted with the environment, not randomly, but intentionally. This is where the case took its first major turn. A digital review of nearby traffic and security feeds revealed something unexpected. There were time gaps, not large enough to immediately raise alarms, but consistent enough to form a pattern. Several minutes of missing footage across multiple devices in the same time window. That kind of synchronization was rare and suspicious. Detectives began interviewing neighbors again, focusing on micro details, sounds, timing, unusual observations. Most answers were still nothing unusual, but one detail stood out from a nearby resident. A brief mention of a vehicle idling longer than normal near the street, then leaving without headlights for a short stretch. The description was vague, but the timing aligned with the surveillance gaps. Now the case had direction, but still no motive, no suspect, and no confirmed sequence of events. Then came the psychological twist. When forensic analysts reviewed the original 911 call more carefully, they noticed something subtle in the audio pattern. There were pauses that didn't match natural speech hesitation. There was controlled breathing, structured phrasing, almost rehearsed. It suggested the caller may not have been reacting emotionally, but managing communication strategically. This raised a disturbing possibility. Was the caller reporting an event or constructing a narrative? Meanwhile, investigators expanded their search radius. Local transit logs, fuel station records, and toll data were analyzed. A partial movement trail began forming, but it was incomplete, like someone had deliberately minimized traceable exposure. By this point, media attention began to grow quietly. Law enforcement described it as high complexity with intentional obfuscation. One senior investigator summarized it bluntly. "This doesn't feel like a disappearance. It feels like a controlled removal of reality." And just when it seemed the case couldn't become more complicated, a breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. A second audio fragment, not from the 911 call, but from a nearby private device that captured ambient sound. It contained a faint exchange, not fully clear, but enough to suggest multiple voices were present that night. This single discovery shifted the entire direction of the investigation, because now it was no longer about one missing person. It was about who was really present in that house and what they were trying to hide. As pressure increased, investigators finally narrowed their focus to a timeline reconstruction. Every verified data point, calls, movement traces, surveillance fragments, and witness inconsistencies was mapped into a single sequence. What emerged was not a straightforward narrative. It was layered and deliberately fragmented. The case revealed that the original assumption of a simple disappearance was incorrect. Instead, evidence pointed toward a coordinated situation involving multiple participants, each contributing in different ways to the final outcome. But the most shocking discovery wasn't the structure of events, it was the intent behind them. Investigators concluded that the environment inside the home had been manipulated not just to hide what happened, but to influence how authorities would interpret it. Every detail that looked accidental was actually part of a controlled design. Even the 911 call itself became a focal point again. Experts determined that the emotional restraint in the voice wasn't natural stress suppression. It matched patterns associated with rehearsed crisis communication. This suggested the call may have been part of the plan from the beginning. As the investigation reached its final phase, one critical realization emerged. Nothing in the case was random. Not the missing footage, not the staging inside the home, not even the timing of reports. Everything aligned too precisely. But precision pointed to intention, and intention pointed to responsibility. Eventually, authorities reconstructed a probable sequence that explained the missing person's status and the roles of those involved. However, due to legal limitations and conflicting interpretations, full public disclosure remained restricted. What was confirmed, though, was enough to shock even experienced investigators. The case was not about a sudden disappearance. It was about controlled narrative construction under pressure, and the manipulation of perception itself. By the end of the investigation, several internal procedures were reviewed and updated, especially regarding early-stage response protocols. The case became a reference point in training programs, used to demonstrate how incomplete information can be intentionally shaped to mislead investigations. And yet, one question still remains unanswered to this day. If everything was so carefully controlled, what was the real reason behind it all? That answer may never fully come to light, because sometimes in cases like this, truth is not hidden. It is distributed across multiple versions of the same story. And which version you believe depends on what you are allowed to see. If this case shocked you, imagine how many real cases like this remain unsolved or misunderstood every year. Subscribe for more real-style investigative stories that expose the hidden layers behind police cases in the USA.